Hey vinyl community and all my music loving friends. Today is a sequel to a video I made back in the summertime. That was called Highlights from a Collection, Part 1. This is obviously Part 2. I was fortunate enough to acquire a sizable collection from a colleague of mine at work who went to college in the late 60s, early 70s here in the New England area and had a campus radio program. And he had a pretty impressive collection of psychedelic, blues, and a small amount of jazz. But predominantly psychedelic rock and blues being the main themes of the collection. So as I did in the first video, it's hard because all this stuff was good. A lot of the sleeves are a little banged up just due to travel and stuff like that, time, wear, but I was able to clean them up, repair some of the sleeves, and not make them look new, but presentable again, and clean up the records themselves, and they play great. I had a couple that were warped that I had to pitch, but for the most part, everything was pretty top notch. So anyway, today again I'm going to show some highlights from the collection. Again, it was hard to pick, but some of these artists I did have already. Some of these releases on compact disc, as I've said several times on this channel. I was buying a lot of compact discs in the late 80s and into the 90s as that technology seemed to be taking over the world, and I went back to buying albums into the 2000s again, and kept all my stuff though from my younger days. So anyway, without further ado, let's just jump right in. The Spencer Davis Group. This was released in 1967. This is American pressing. It's basically a compilation of their first two years of work. Of course, you know, everybody knows the track "Give Me Some Lovin'." Some of the other highlights on here: "It Hurts Me So," "Goodbye Stevie," "When I Come Home," "Nobody Knows," "Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out." Of course, the frontman, Steve Winwood. Now, the founding member of the band, Spencer Davis, was around 25 at the time. Steve Winwood, being the musical prodigy that he was, self-taught piano player and guitar at a young age, under the age of 10, as the story goes. His brother Muff was in the band. I believe that's him right here. And they recruited Stevie due to his keyboard and piano playing abilities. And as it turned out, he was quite the vocalist and took over from Spencer Davis on lead vocals. Just due to, it was just obvious that he was better fit for that role. So again, he joined Spencer Davis Group at the age of 15 with his older brother, and of course Spencer Davis and the other member, the name escapes me. I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, Steve Winwood, his first official release in the world of music. After he kind of outgrew the Spencer Davis Group a year or two later, he was to form Traffic with Dave Mason and Jim Capaldi, and here they are. This is their debut release. This is an American pressing. It's called, obviously, Mr. Fantasy. The British press was called Heaven Is In Your Mind, just a different title, but it had the British pressing has the same cover as this one. Again, the American one being Mr. Fantasy. Of course, the title track, really great on here. There's a young Steve Winwood, probably 17 or 18 years old at the time. And there's Jim Capaldi. Actually, Dave Mason was not in the band at this point. I stand corrected. Chris Wood over there. So yeah, just a classic, a nice kickoff to the Traffic career. And I'm going to go through most of the Traffic catalog was actually in the collection, so I'm just going to walk through real quick some of the other Traffic releases. This is a follow-up. This is a self-titled. It's just called Traffic. This was released in 1968. At this point, Dave Mason was in. There he is right there. I believe that's Dave. His time with the band would be short-lived. I'll get into that in a moment. Nice gatefold sleeve here. There's all the tracks, and of course all the lyrics. Some of the highlights on this one, you can all join in. Don't Be Sad, Feeling Alright. My favorite on this one, a song called 40,000 Headmen. It's really, really excellent. Just really great tune. Anyway, there on the back, Traffic, and again, there's the band. The follow-up to that is the 1969 release, Last Exit. There it is. There's a few different versions of this cover as I was looking on Discogs. This being the American pressing. Yeah, so there's the back. Shanghai Noodle Factory, that's the standout on this one. That's on side 1, look that up. Medicated Goo, that's a really great track. Feeling Good, that's an excellent jam, clocking in at around 10 minutes, 50 seconds. Again, Traffic, last exit, right? 1969. Follow-up to that, at this, Winwood had really grown as a songwriter. And still, I mean, the guy was so young, but already very well accomplished. He ventured into the studio to do a solo album. Well, he was in there for a few weeks, and then, of course, he invited Jim Capaldi back in, and ended up, got the whole band in, actually. Winwood. It's actually Winwood and Capaldi. Sorry, I take that back. So it was less a solo album, and more of a collaboration between him and Jim Capaldi. There's the gatefold sleeve. There we are on the inside. Actually, Chris Wood does play on this as well. So the trio was actually back together. So much for a solo album. Winwood missed his collaborators and brought them in. And the result is really great. This is more of a folk rock version of Traffic on this. The kickoff track, Glad, that's really, really excellent. Freedom Rider, of course, John Barleycorn from the album title, of course, John Barleycorn Must Die. Release date on this one, 1970, yeah. So, yeah, nice artwork there. Minimalist on the color, just the brown and black. So that's kind of it with the Traffic stuff that was in that collection. I'm trying to show just stuff that was in the collection and not from my own personal stuff that I already had. I have most of the other Traffic stuff as they bled into the 70s, and yeah, it's all good. This was in the collection. I had never heard of this, and I consider myself a pretty devoted Steve Winwood fan. Pre-80s Steve Winwood, let me clarify. This was a concept album built around space travel was the theme of this. Concept albums were a big thing, more in prog rock circles in the 70s. But the gentleman here, Stomo Yamashita, he's a Japanese jazz percussionist, and he put this thing together with Steve Winwood. There he is, there they are on the back. There's Stomo Yamashita right there, and Michael Shrive, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. You may recognize him. Of course, he played with Carlos Santana at Woodstock on guitar as well. So Michael Shrive. So yeah, it starts out Solitude and goes into another track, Nature. It's almost instrumental, the first half of Solitude. It's Steve Winwood playing keyboards, of course, and breaks into a just beautiful ballad kind of rhythm. It's a slow burner into Nature, which is also a slow cut. Just beautiful orchestration in the background. Michael Shrive keeps the guitar work down, so he's not the main focus here. But yeah, this is really far out stuff. It ventures into a little self-indulgence at points, but I'm really glad that I discovered this. It's called Go, of course, and the release date on this is, of course, I believe 1976. Yeah, cool artwork there. So I guess that's supposed to be a desert under the stars, and of course Go in the center here. Stomo Yamashita, Steve Winwood, Michael Shrive, Go, 1976. That's definitely worth seeking out. So I did mention Steve Winwood 80s. It's not to be dismissed. I mean, the guy was still only around 40 years old, and he went full solo. And this is actually from my collection. I just thought I'd show it. It's an audiophile's delight. It's his debut solo album and his best. I could do without the rest of the 80s stuff, but good on him. He reinvented himself as a pop superstar. He couldn't have been further away from his roots in Traffic or the Spencer Davis Group, or Blind Faith for that matter, the other band that he was in for one album with Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker. But he just reinvented himself as this pop superstar in the 80s and embraced videos and got into all of that. So again, this is Arc of the Diver is the title of his solo album debut in 1980. Of course, a couple of the highlights, you've probably heard it, While You See a Chance, Secondhand Woman, Slow Down Sundown, and Spanish Dancer are the highlights on this one for me. Arc of a Diver, the title track, that's a nice slow burner there too. But after this, I lost interest. But yeah, this is the recording of this, the studio. I'm not sure who the producer was on this. But yeah, it's stellar. It's really good. All right, shifting gears. We're in the 70s here still. For this release, I believe this is 1973, 75. Sorry, I take that back. This is the third release from Bad Company. It's called Run With The Pack. Of course, they had their self-titled debut, which was huge. And then Six Shooter or Sharpshooter. I have that on compact disc. And this, of course, being their third. At this point, these guys, of course, led by Paul Rogers and Mick Ralphs on guitar still. There they are in some seedy motel room. You can get more 70s than that. Of course, 1975, the release on this, and there's Paul Rogers down in front. And the old television in the background. It looks like Bugs Bunny. They're watching cartoons. But at this point, the band kind of were setting sail for the sea of mediocrity, if you will. It's not really. There's nothing really. I probably wouldn't have bought this. I was happy with the first two Bad Company albums, but there are a couple of moments on here. Silver, Blue, and Gold, that's a really nice ballad. Live for the Music is good. And Simple Man, that's another good one. And it ends off, there's another one there called Fade Away. That's a good one too. But yeah, it's okay. It's what I'd call typical stadium classic rock. Again, not a 5-star record, but yeah, I'm glad I have it. Bad Company, Run With The Pack. Getting into the folk scene here for a moment. Of course, to know them is to love them. The Brothers Gibb, otherwise known as the Bee Gees. This is a 1967 release. 1968. They had done straight up kind of folk in the vein of Peter, Paul, and Mary prior to this. They have some orchestral accompaniment. I assume that's what these two guys are doing, because there's Barry, of course, there's Morris, and there's Robin, and so these other two guys are not Gibbs, they're just sidemen, I guess. I don't know, they're part of the orchestration, I guess. But yeah, when I was a kid, I really liked the Bee Gees. Guilty pleasure, call it what you want. There's some great moments on here, though. I've Got to Get a Message to You. Of course, that's a very popular number from the period from these guys. I Started a Joke, of course. Kilburn Towers is good. And the title track, Idea. Again, it's called Idea. There it is, the Bee Gees. 1968. As I mentioned earlier, blues was a prevalent genre in this collection. And here we are with a band formed in Greenwich Village, New York City, 1965, called the Blues Project. I believe the founding member, Danny Kalb on lead guitar, Al Cooper on organ, Roy Blumenfeld on drums, Stan Kohlberg on bass, and Tommy Flanders on vocals. See the back. And this is called Live at the Cafe Au Go-Go. It is a set captured at a small club. As I said, they were formed in Greenwich Village, and that's where they gained popularity and traction at the beginning. Of course, in 1965, and there they are. It's funny, being from Canada, there's actually a song on here called Alberta. Thought that was amusing. But some of the other highlights, You Go, I'll Go With You, Violets of Dawn, and Backdoor Man. Very good. Blues Project, Live at the Cafe Au Go-Go. 1965. Release date on that. 1967. Sorry, I take that back. They were formed in 65. That was released in 67. Projections, this is their only full-length studio album. This was also released in 1967. There's the guys right there. You can see there's Al Cooper right there. He's everywhere, Al Cooper, in the 60s. He played with everyone. Multi-instrumentalist, as I've mentioned before. Very talented guy. A lot of great stuff on this one. This is really good psych blues. 5-star, highly recommended. Kicks off with the track I Can't Keep From Crying. You Can't Catch Me is very good. Cheryl's Going Home. Flute Thing was a big song on this one. Not the longest track on it, but coming in at 5:58, that would have been considered a long jam for this period. And there they are in the back. Looks like they're in the studio. Just some black and white shots of the band. Of course, they were on the Verve label. Produced by Tom Wilson. Projections, 1967, the release date on that one. The follow-up, Live at Town Hall. Al Cooper had left at this point. He went and formed another band, and just was doing some other stuff. This was just outtakes and a couple of studio outtakes and a couple of live tracks. There on the back. It's called Live at Town Hall. Although the whole album is not live, like I said, there's a couple of studio cuts. I don't know if this was just an obligation to the label they had to fulfill, but they do another version of Flute Thing on here. Of course, it's a live version. It comes in at 10 minutes. That's the highlight on here for me. No Time Like the Right Time is also good. And Wake Me, Shake Me is good too. It's a good jam at 9 minutes, 31 seconds. Again, Blues Project live at Town Hall. Okay. Definite departure from what we've been talking about so far. There he is, the Thin White Duke himself, David Bowie. This is Space Oddity. I believe this was his second release, released in 1969. There he is, on the back, in all his glory. This kind of plays almost like, I don't know what you call it, maybe like, kind of like folk new wave, before there was new wave, I don't know. But it definitely has a folky feel to it. Space Oddity, the title track, is very good. Signet Committee. It's probably the second best song next to the title track on this. It's very good. It's Bowie in his younger days. Hadn't really come into his own yet, but still definitely worth having. David Bowie, Space Oddity, 1969, the release on that. Back to the United States for this band. Of course, one of my favorite guitar players of all time. The great Joe Walsh, still with us, of course, and kicking out the jams. He formed a band called the James Gang in Ohio. It was a couple of guys he'd gone to school with at Kent State, the university there, of course. And the band was formed, I want to say around 1967, 68. So this is their debut. It's called Your Album. This was released in 1969. There they are, Power Trio. And of course, nice gatefold sleeve. Kind of cool psychedelic artwork on there, if you can see it. And then of course you've got the track listing over here. So Jim Fox on drums, Tom Chris on bass, and of course Joe Walsh on lead vocals and guitar. So it kicks off with the intro. It's an instrumental track. It goes right into Take a Look Around, into Funk 48. And on the other side, I Don't Have the Time is good. Stop is good. Stop is on a live album that I'm going to talk about in a second. I'll get another good version of that. But again, the kickoff, this is a 5-star essential. Again, I have all these James Gang already on compact disc, so it was nice to get them on record. Again, as I've said before, I'm not in the business of spending money just to duplicate stuff that I already have on CD. If I see something for a good price, I'll pick it up on record. But again, it comes down to a space issue too. I've only got so much room, but I'm really glad to get the James Gang catalog on record, of course. So this is the follow-up. This is called, of course, Rides Again. The release date on this one is 1970. Could be off on that, 69, 1970. Again, inside, nice gatefold. There's the band. Kind of an artist interpretation. So, sequel to Funk 48 on the debut is Funk 49. Also on this, Tend My Garden. There I Go Again. It's just great. Like Walsh has this, the Bomber coming in at 7:04. Again, that's probably the best track on this for me. But I think Joe Walsh, he's such a relaxed style, but he could really rock out on the guitar, and he could sing too. Kind of has a nasally sound, but once you get used to it, his singing's pretty enjoyable. And of course, love that back cover. There they are on some country road on their Harleys, or I guess they're Harleys, big ass motorcycles, whatever. James Gang, Rides Again, not to be missed. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a song called Stop on the Year album. That's the kick-off track on this live recording. I don't know if this, I think it must have been at Carnegie Hall. That's the poster. And there they are. Yeah, they kind of this outlaw. They tried to put out this outlaw kind of vibe, like Cowboys. Later, of course, the Eagles did the same thing. you know, with the cowboy look and all that in their early work. Of course, the horses down in front. And then there's the band on the back. I don't know what they're doing. It looks like they're sweeping the sidewalk. Interesting. But highlights on this, of course, the kickoff, stop, take a look around. Side 2 is just 2 tracks, Walk Away, go straight into Lost Woman. It's the whole side. It's a super jam. Yeah, I'd never seen this live album before, so I didn't actually have this on compact disc. Don't know if it actually ever got reissued on compact disc. But here it is on record, and it's really great. After this, Joe Walsh decided to hang it up and move on and do a full-on solo career. He did do a brief album with a band he formed called Barnstorm, and then Rocky Mountain Way was the big track that came out of that. And of course, he did a few more solo albums, and then of course joined the Eagles around 1974, and definitely gave them an edge that they were in need of from the California folk rock. And Joe Walsh brought an entirely different element to the Eagles, as you're probably aware. Yeah, again, James Gang, live in concert. I believe 1971, the release date on that. Just going to flip this album over. Playing in the background there is Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I'm going to get into that in a moment. Honorable mention, I should say, for the James Gang is an album I already had in my collection when I was home to Ontario. Probably, this is 4 or 5 years ago, on one of my trips to see some family and friends. A friend of mine, Barry, gave me this. It's called Thirds. It's also very good. Again, there they are, the power trio that they are. Great photo of the guys on the back there. There's Joe, of course, down in front. And, of course, Walk Away on this, Midnight Man, Things I Could Be, Live My Life Again. Release date on this one, I believe, is 1970-71. But, yeah, Thirds. Thanks, Barry. Love this album. All right. So back into some more blues. Of course, when most people, if you're not really into music and you think of Fleetwood Mac, you think of Stevie Nicks, and then nothing wrong with that. But of course, you got to go back to the '60s when they were formed in England. The original incarnation of the band, of course, led by Peter Green, and of course Mick Fleetwood, the drummer. There he is, right there, a young Mick Fleetwood. This is somewhere in England, I assume. A nice gatefold sleeve with the photo. So this is essentially the 2 Peter Green Fleetwood Mac albums, and they just called this Black Magic Woman. This was an American pressing of this. It's a double album, again featuring, these would have been previously released as separate albums. One was called Fleetwood Mac and another was called English Rose, and they're all compiled together here for this double set, as I said. So of course, Black Magic Woman, everybody thinks that was a Carlos Santana song. Of course, he did it well, but it was originally a Peter Green song, and it's of course the title here, Black Magic Woman. Some of the other highlights on this: Shake Your Money Maker, that's kind of a blues standard. One Sunny Day, World Keep on Turning, Cold Black Night, Evening Boogie, and Coming Home. Really good. So it's interesting here, I should point out the liner notes here. You can see that. There it is. That's Peter Goddard. He was a music writer for the Toronto Star, and still is. And of course, this came out in 1970. The release date on this. He would have been a very young journalist at that time. He went to U of T and started working at the Toronto Star in the late 60s. And actually in the 80s, when I was a kid living in Ontario, I used to read the Star on the weekends. The music section, they had a pretty good section, and he would review concerts and review new albums. Again, that music critic by the name of Peter Goddard. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool that he wrote these liner notes, and it's basically a story, or his thoughts on what he thinks about Fleetwood Mac at the time, from when they started in 1967, as some of the finest, cleanest British blues around. 3 of these guys had come from John Mayall's Blues Breakers, of course, too, so they brought that to the table. Just really good, I guess you call it white English blues, you know. But there it is. Black Magic Woman, double LP set, Fleetwood Mac. Back to Psychedelic San Francisco this is 1967, the release on this. Of course, the great Jefferson Airplane. There's Grace Slick, of course, right there, young Grace Slick, and of course Marty Ballin and others. Interesting trivia. This was, of course, I think their second release and probably one of their biggest to date. Really, for the period, it's just psychedelic rock at its best. Short songs, nothing here beyond like a 3.5 minute time as far as the track time on these. But some of the highlights, of course, Somebody to Love, everybody knows that. There's a really nice ballad on here called Today. It was written by Marty Ballin. Apparently it was originally written because Marty Ballin was a songwriter and he wrote songs for others that he would sell. And it was originally meant for Tony Bennett, but then they decided to keep it and record it, and thankfully they did just that. And on side 2, Embryonic Journey, that's a really good psychedelic number, and White Rabbit, and of course it finishes off with Plastic Fantastic Lover. Jacket on this looks pretty banged up, but I'm telling you, I cleaned up the vinyl and it plays great, and I'm really glad I have it. And it's an original, and this is a mono version of this. Or no, sorry, it is not mono. Take that back. It's in stereo. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Another good one. It's 1967, the release on that. So as I said, there was very minimal jazz in the collection, but there was this nugget, which is really good. Of course, the great jazz guitar player Kenny Burrell, and of course some of the other personnel on here. Bill English on drums, Ray Barretto on conga. If you don't have congas, you don't have a party. And tenor sax, Stanley Turrentine, Major Hawley Jr. on bass. So this came out in 1963. Of course, it's on the Blue Note label. Yeah, it plays great. There you go. There's Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue. So Chitlins Concarne, Mule, Soul Lament, Midnight Blue, the title track, side 1. I mean, the whole thing's really good. And on side 2, there's some longer cuts. G Baby, Ain't I Good to You, and Saturday Night Blues. And interestingly enough, speaking of psychedelic, Wavy Gravy, who was a character that hung around with the Grateful Dead in the 60s, but no connection to Kenny Burrell, I don't think, at least. So yeah, just really relaxing jazz guitar, Kenny Burrell. I have some of his other stuff again on CD, but this is the only thing I have on vinyl from Kenny Burrell, and I'm really glad I have it. Again, on Blue Note, it's in excellent condition, and I'll probably listen to this later. It's just, it's killer. Highly recommended. Midnight Blue, Kenny Burrell. Excellent guitar player. So going back to some psychedelic stuff, of course, The Great Love here. So this was released 1970, the release date on this. So yeah, this was just at this point, Alvin Lee, he was kind of getting a little wild and hard to control. They were kind of done at this point, but this is a compilation. You can see they're on the Elektra label. Lone Again, of course, is a great song. Kicks the whole thing off. Other highlights, Your Friend and Mine, My Little Red Book. They do a nice version of Hey Joe on here, Jimi Hendrix song, and She Comes in Colors. It's a nice pop number. But yeah, they when they were on their game, Love, they couldn't be beat. But again, this is a compilation of tracks from their first. I guess they formed around 66, and this came out in 70. So again, nice gatefold on this. Well, there's the band on the back. Nice liner notes on the inside on the gatefold. Yeah, this is very good, and also in very good condition. So some good highlights. Again, the track Alone Again, or that was covered by an 70s, 80s outfit called The Damned. That cover is also worth looking up. They really do it justice. Love. Still in the psychedelic stuff here for a second. This is a band called Moby Grape. They were San Francisco-based blues, country, rock, classic rock style in that vein. This was their third release, and it was a collection of 5 tracks, all in studio, all improvisational. They went in the studio and just laid these down. Really good musicians can do that. They were a 5-piece band. Of course, Mike Bloomfield was in the band. And Al Cooper sits in just on this for the studio session. Plays on 2 or 3 of the tracks here. it's just great. Marmalade on side 2, clocking in at 13:51, and on side 1, Boysenberry Jam into Black Currant Jam. It's just really good. Like a one-off. They, again, went in the studio, just laid it down, played what they were thinking, and it plays great. And it's just really heavy blues, psych. Grape Jam, aptly named, of course, because it's a jam album, and it's all improv. I love the cover. Really cool. All right, and the release date on that one, of course, 1968. A lot of good things came into the world that year, including myself. All right, this is Baxter's another jazz highlight from the collection. Of course, on the Impulse label, the great Pharoah Sanders, saxophone player, freeform jazz in the vein of John Coltrane, of course, who I believe would have been his main mentor, Pharoah Sanders, that is. This came out in 1970. It's called Karma again. It's his third. Is it 19? No, the release date on this, February 1969. Really cool gatefold. There he is in a meditative state, it looks like. It's the personnel on this. I mean, Richard Davis on bass, French horn, Julius Watkins, James Spaulding on flute. On and on it goes. William Hart on drums. And of course the great Pharoah Sanders on tenor saxophone. So there's only there's 2 songs on this, each one song for each side. Of course, the creator has a master plan as side A, and side B is a track called Colors. It's really great. If you're not into freeform or progressive jazz, stay away from this. This is definitely not traditional by any stretch of the imagination. It goes places. It just it's all over the place, but it all comes together in the end. You definitely got to stay focused when you're listening to this. It's out there. But yeah, Pharoah Sanders. And again, the creator has a master plan. And side 2, actually, Light of Love is a brief intro to Colors on side 2. So Pharoah Sanders, Karma. Yeah, excellent. So I'm going on a little longer than I usually do today, but there's just so much in this collection, and I only wanted to do 2 episodes, so trying to wrap it up with these highlights with this second episode. Again, highlights from a collection. This is a band from Boston. There was they tried to do their version of the San Francisco scene, and it was labeled by critics here in Boston as Boss Town, B-O-S-S, that is, Boss Town. And, it was kind of like, the redheaded stepchild or whatever. It's not San Francisco, these bands, but, this album is pretty good. Produced by a guy named Alan Lorber, he was a Boston guy. This is a band called Ultimate Spinach. Release date on this is 1967. Again, they were part of this small contingency of psychedelic bands from the Boston area. But it's really nice. There was a girl vocalist on here, a woman named Barbara Hudson, and she sings on most of these tracks. And it's really good. Ego Trip, Sacrifice of the Moon, and Hip Death Goddess is worth looking up. Ballad of the Hip Death Goddess. Again, there's the gatefold. Ultimate Spinach from Boston, 1967, the release on that. If you like psych, check that out. It's on YouTube. You can just look it up. So, in his early days, he was a blues player. Of course, Steve Miller. This is Steve Miller Band, Brave New World. The release date on this one, I believe, 1969. There he is on the inside of the band. Really nice artwork on this one. This is trying to find the track listing here. Yeah, of course, so kicks off, of course, there's Brave New World. They were on the Capitol label. Brave New World into Celebration song. A couple of good lead-off tracks. And, of course, side 2, there's a ballad called Seasons. I really recommend you look that up. It's called Seasons. If you're only familiar with later Steve Miller, you really owe it to yourself to check out his stuff in the 60s. It's just really good stuff. The guy could play, and he always played with different session guys come and go at that time. He didn't have a firm band. But yeah, it's worth just seeking out. It's called Brave New World, Steve Miller Band. So we're near the end here, folks. So from Chicago, and this is blues as well. Of course, this is Paul Butterfield playing in the background. It's a double live album. I'll talk about it in a second. So I only had in my collection, I had their debut. They, of course, as I said, again, they were formed in Chicago. This was released in 1965, and it was followed up, of course, some of the tracks on this. Born in Chicago. Again, Shake Your Money Maker. They do a version of that blues standard, a track I mentioned earlier. Mystery Train. It's got a real... of course, the Elvis Presley version is also really good from the Sun Records days in Memphis. But yeah, that's my favorite on here. They do a great version of Mystery Train. So this is their debut. There was a vinyl copy in the collection, but it was very badly warped, and I couldn't do anything to save it. So it's in the landfill, unfortunately. And there was not a copy of East West, but I have this. This was a reissue, 1996. It's just got 3 different versions of East West. Was the second Paul Butterfield Blues Band album, and East West, of course, was the title track, and it's a long jam. And it was in 1966, as you can see. Yeah, where it was recorded, Hollywood, live in Hollywood, 1966, East West. So again, this is some sort of this label here. Sounds like a winner. Some of these CD reissues, but the quality is actually pretty good on that reissue. I shouldn't complain about it. So jumping in, this was the 3rd Paul Butterfield Blues Band album. It's called the Resurrection of Pig Boy Crabshaw, and I love the artwork. It's really cool, introspective, psychedelic, really cool. And the release date on this one, I believe, was 1967. So at this point, he'd gone from a traditional blues outfit, and he went and added a 3-piece horn section led by a saxophone player, David Sanborn, who would later on go into the 70s and have his own career in the jazz world. Kind of mediocre. I'm not a big fan of David Sanborn's solo jazz stuff, but it is what it is. He was a good player, and he was in this band. So again, yeah, with the added another layer to the sound with the horn section. Again, a 3-piece horn section with a trumpet, saxophone player, and I forget what the other guy was. 2 sax players and a trumpet. So on this one, highlights include One More Heartache, Run Out of Time, and Tolling Bells. Again, 3rd album from Paul Butterfield Blues Band right there. Again, release date on that, 1967. And we go into In My Own Dream. Of course, at this point, Mike Bloomfield had been in the band as well, playing guitar, and Alvin Bishop, then at this point, kind of took over as the preeminent guitar player. Paul Butterfield, the band leader, I should have said earlier, plays harmonica and he sings. He does not play guitar or saxophone or any horns. Again, straight up harmonica, traditional blues guy from Chicago, and sings. So again, this is called In My Own Dream. It's very good as well with the horns. See, the band is pretty sizable at this point. Full 8-piece band, again with the horn section and all the rest of it. Really nice liner notes here included, telling where the band were at the time, tells about where they'd been touring around the United States and England. Some of the highlights on this one, Morning Blues is very good. Drunk Again, that's a good one. Really good blues number. Get Yourself Together. Yeah, it's good. Again, In My Own Dream, Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And where are we now? We are in 1969 for Keep On Moving. There they are on the front. Paul Butterfield, of course, down in the front. There they are. It's called Keep On Moving, the title on this one. Really nice. I don't know who their artist was, but all the sleeves have really nice artwork. Some of the highlights on this one, Love Disease, Where Did My Baby Go, No Amount of Lovin', and Walking By Myself. It's all really good, solid. Paul Butterfield Blues Band, Keep On Moving, name of that release. And lastly, we are at what I was just playing there. Of course, at this point, Butterfield, this is 1970, the release on this. Yeah, really double LP set, recorded live across various locations. ironically produced by Todd Rundgren. I think the bulk of these, recorded the bulk of these were, I think, a two-night stint they did at the Troubadour in Los Angeles. So not a bunch of venues. It was all at the Troubadour, legendary venue in Los Angeles, of course, well known. Of course, the Doors played there, and lots of others. Too long a list to mention. But yeah, all his big ones are on here. Of course, he had different session guys with him at this point. He was really the only remaining member and the founding member left. Elvin Bishop had gone on to form his own band, do his own solo thing. And Mike Bloomfield, of course, was long gone. Electric Flag, etc. Some of the highlights on here, The Boxers, a good tune. Get Together Again. And Driftin' and Driftin' is also very good. Again, Butterfield Blues Band Live. And there they are on the inside. So anyway, that's it for today. Again, highlights from a collection part 2 from my colleague Jack. He knew his music, still does, and I'm very appreciative of all these albums, and I've really been enjoying them. And I hope you have an opportunity to look up some of those songs that I've recommended, and also some of these albums. They're all very worthwhile. If you like psych blues, a lot of these selections are right up your alley, and you'd be missing out if you didn't check them out. So anyway, that's it for another video. This is probably my longest video. I'm looking at the time here, but there was a lot to talk about today. So I hope everybody's doing well. We're heading into the Thanksgiving week here in the United States. It's probably my favorite holiday. I love it. Football and food. What else do you need, right? And I hope anybody here in the U.S. hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and hope everybody's doing great. And yeah, I'll see you next time.